October 1968. Scranton, Pennsylvania. The coal town is quieter than it used to be. The mines closing one by one, and on a side street off Lackawanna Avenue a man of 64 stands in the door of a boxing gym he is about to lose. For 35 years his gym taught the neighborhood's boys to stand up straight and keep their hands up. Now the rent has outrun the few fighters left. The landlord wants the building, and the lights are about to go dark on the one good thing a whole neighborhood was built around. Across the street, a broad-shouldered man in a dark coat stands looking up at the faded gym sign. Nobody recognizes him yet. Here is the story. His name was Salvatore Marchetti. Everyone called him Sal. He was 64 years old in the autumn of 1968, and for 35 years he had been making men out of boys in a second-floor gym on Penn Avenue. Sal was born in 1904 in Scranton's Italian neighborhood, the son of immigrants from Calabria. His father, Vincenzo Marchetti, worked the anthracite mines that built Scranton the hard coal that heated half the country, and like so many in that town, the mines marked the family. Vincenzo was killed in 1919, when Sal was 15, in the Baltimore mine, in one of the cave-ins that took men in those years before anyone counted a miner's life worth much. Sal never forgot watching his mother count out coins on the kitchen table after, figuring how the family would eat. Sal was a quick, scrappy kid, and boxing was the way a poor Italian boy earned respect on those streets. He fought as an amateur, then a few years as a pro, a tough lightweight, never a champion, but a man who could take a punch and give one back. When his fighting days ended, he did the thing he loved best. He opened a gym. In 1933, in the teeth of the Depression, and he taught. For 35 years, Marchetti's gym took in the neighborhood's boys, the angry ones, the poor ones, the ones with no fathers because the mines had taken them. Sal taught them to box, but really he taught them other things. To show up on time, to look a man in the eye, to control their temper instead of letting it control them. Half the steady men in that neighborhood had learned to stand up straight in Sal's gym. Sal married Rosa in 1930. They had one daughter, Angela, born in 1935. Rosa died in 1959, and after that, it was Sal and the gym. And the gym was enough, because it was full of other people's sons. Sal had a particular thing about him. An old break-a-hook he never quite saw coming in a fight in Wilkes-Barre in 1928 had left his nose set slightly off-center, and it gave his voice a soft, low rasp, so that when Sal talked to a kid in the corner, low and close, it sounded like a secret being handed down. The boys would lean in to hear him. 40 years of fighters learned to listen for that raspy near whisper. The gym radio played the AM stations that autumn the year of Hey Jude, which seemed to be on every hour, though Sal preferred the old Sinatra. Coffee at the diner downstairs was a dime. Sal drove a tired 1958 Dodge he parked in the alley. But it was 1968 now, and the boys didn't come like they used to. Television, other things. The neighborhood thinning out as the mines closed. The gym ran on a handful of fighters and Sal's own thinning savings. And the man who owned the building had decided the second floor on Penn Avenue could earn more as something else. On the morning of October 9th, 1968, at 10:00, the building's owner came up the gym stairs. A real estate man named Donald Speck, in a good topcoat, with a folder, who did not take off his hat in the place. He read from a typed page. "Mr. Marchetti, your lease on the second floor expires December 31st. The building's being converted. The space is leased to a retail tenant as of January 1st. The rent on a renewal would be $220 a month regardless, which I understand is beyond your means. So this serves as notice. You'll need to be cleared out by year's end. He glanced around at the ring, the heavy bags, the framed fight photos going back to the 30s. Frankly, nobody boxes anymore. It's a dead trade. A couple of Sal's last fighters were their two teenage boys wrapping their hands, who stopped to listen, and an old cornerman named Gus. They heard all of it. 35 years, Sal said, in that low rasp. I've had boys come up these stairs who'd have ended up in jail or worse. They came up here instead, and that's very admirable. But it's not a business. Speck closed the folder. Times change, Mr. Marchetti. December 31st. He set his card on the ring apron and went back down the stairs. Sal stood very still under the framed photographs of 40 years of fighters, his off-center nose, his low voice. He did not raise it. He did not say what it would mean to close the only thing he had left. He picked up the card, looked at it a moment, and slid it into his shirt pocket. Then he turned to the two boys. Hands up, he rasped. Elbows in. We've still got till December. And he went back to work. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. The broad-shouldered man across the street was Charles Bronson. He was 46 years old that autumn. A real star now. And he was in northeastern Pennsylvania for an ordinary reason. He was passing through the coal country he came from, the anthracite region where he'd been born. Charlie Buczynski, a coal miner's son, one of 15 children, in a patch town not far from Scranton. And he had stopped on Penn Avenue because of the sign, because Charles Bronson had learned to box in a gym just like this one, and in fact, in this very gym. Here is the thing few people knew about Charlie Buczynski. Before the war, a poor, angry, half-wild coal patch kid with nothing, he had come down to Scranton and climbed the stairs to Marchetti's gym, and a younger Sal Marchetti had taken one look at him and put gloves on his hands. Sal taught him to box. More than that, Sal taught a kid who'd known nothing but the mines that he could be something, that he could stand up straight and look a man in the eye. Charlie boxed a little as an amateur. He carried what Sal taught him into the Army, into the war, into a tail gunner's seat over the Pacific, and into the long, hard climb afterward. He never forgot the man with the off-center nose and the low voice in the corner saying, "Hands up. You're worth more than they told you." He had not been back in 30 years. He climbed the stairs. Sal was working the two boys when the famous man came up into the gym. Sal didn't know him at first. 30 years and a movie career had changed the face. But Bronson knew Sal. He stood there a moment, listening to that low rasp giving a kid the exact same instruction it had given him 3 decades before, and something in him went very still. He saw Speck's card on the ring apron. He heard, from old Gus, the whole story: the lease, the conversion, December 31st, the dead trade. Bronson did not pull out a checkbook in front of Sal. He knew the old man would never take charity, least of all from a former fighter. So he did it the way it had to be done. He went, quietly, through a Scranton lawyer, and he bought the building. The whole building. Donald Speck was happy to sell to an anonymous buyer for a good price. And then Bronson set it up so that the gym's rent became $1 a year, payable to a trust, and the trust would cover the gym's expenses and turn it into a proper youth boxing program, with Sal Marchetti as its head trainer, paid a real salary for as long as he wanted the job. New young fighters would be steered there through the parish and the schools. The doors would stay open. The instruction Bronson left with the lawyer was exact. Sal was to be told only that a former fighter who'd trained here had set up a fund for the gym. Not the name, because a man like Sal would not take a gift, but he would accept a debt being repaid by one of his own boys. Which is exactly what it was. Have you ever had someone you once lifted up come back, years later, and quietly lift you at the very moment your life's work was about to go dark? That moment changes everything, doesn't it? Charles Bronson never told Sal Marchetti who he was. He climbed back down those stairs and stood a moment on Penn Avenue, looking up at the faded sign he'd first walked under as a half-wild kid with nothing. Then he got in his car and drove out of Scranton, back through the coal country that made him, toward the life that had carried him so far from it. The lawyer handled everything. Sal was told a former fighter had remembered the gym and wanted it to live. He spent a long time, the old corner man Gus said, trying to figure out which of his hundreds of boys it had been. He never landed on the one who'd grown up to be Charles Bronson. The face on the movie posters and the wild coal patch kid from before the war never quite connected in his mind. He just knew one of his boys had come back for him. Marchetti's gym did not go dark. Sal ran it for 11 more years as head trainer of the youth boxing program the trust had built. Until he was 75, the gym that was supposed to close in December of 1968 trained better than 400 neighborhood boys over those years. Sal kept doing the only thing he'd ever really done, taking in the angry ones, the poor ones, the fatherless ones, and teaching them to stand up straight. 2 of his fighters in those later years went to the Golden Gloves. 1 went to the Olympics trials. But Sal always said the ones he was proudest of were the ones who never won a thing in the ring, the boys who came up those stairs, headed for trouble, and walked back down, headed for something better. By the program's own count, more than 400 kids came through. And the neighborhood always said you could tell a Marchetti boy by the way he looked you in the eye. His daughter Angela, who'd moved to Philadelphia, came home in his last years. Sal died in 1981, at 77. His funeral filled the church on Penn Avenue. 40 years of fighters, gray-haired men now, who'd learned to stand up straight in a second-floor gym. He never knew which of his boys had saved it. He said, near the end, that it didn't matter which one, that every one of them had been worth it, and one of them had proved it. It still hangs in Marchetti's gym, which is still open today, still a youth boxing program on Penn Avenue. On the wall by the door, among the hundreds of fight photographs going back to the 1930s, there is one small framed snapshot, black and white, curled at the edges. A younger Sal Marchetti, dark-haired, his nose already off-center, with his arm around a skinny, scowling teenage boy in borrowed gloves, a poor coal patch kid, all sharp cheekbones and hard eyes. On the white border below, in Sal's own hand, is written a date in the late 1930s, and 3 words. This one listened. For decades, no one looked twice at that photo, one scowling kid among hundreds. The truth surfaced the way it would in a boxing gym through the fighters themselves. In the 1980s, after Sal was gone, the gym's old-timers were going through the wall of photos, and one of them, a man who'd boxed there as a boy and grown up to study every fight filmed there, was stopped cold at that curled snapshot. He knew that face. He'd seen it, older and harder, on movie screens his whole life. The skinny, scowling kid in Sal's arm was Charles Bronson, and the old-timers, standing in the gym a quiet former fighter had bought and saved, finally understood who a former fighter who trained here had been, and why Sal, all those years, had been so sure that every boy who climbed his stairs was worth it. If this story reached you, do me a favor, pass it on. Share it with a veteran in your life. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. There are more Bronson stories coming. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Charles Bronson anymore.